Oh, good evening and welcome to our virtual Committee of Adjustment meeting. Now, on your screen, you'll see members of our Committee of Adjustment. Behind the scenes, we have many staff members with us this evening, and our Secretary-Treasurer is Lindsay Stamen, and our Clerk is Ian Sullivan. They are hosting tonight's meeting and running the Zoom platform from behind the scenes, and you will hear them chime in from time to time. Now, the agenda and the schedules for the meeting have been posted on Dash on the city's website. And if you don't have those documents and you'd like to follow along, then please feel free to access them now. So we have a whopping 2 items on the agenda this evening, and I'd like to share with you the format that we'll be using as we navigate through each application this evening. I'm going to start by introducing an application, and I'll give each applicant or their agent an opportunity to add anything further to the application. If you have nothing further to add, then just simply say so. Next, I'll turn the meeting over to the committee members, where they will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or staff, after which I open the public portion of the meeting. Now, it's during this portion of the meeting where I ask members of the public to raise their virtual hand in Zoom if they have any questions or if they wish to make any comments in respect of an application. Now, if you do have a question or you wish to make a comment, don't expect an immediate response, because it's during the public portion of the meeting where we physically record the questions and comments, and it's only after I close the public portion of the meeting will the questions and comments be addressed by either the applicant, their agent, or staff. And then we have the applicant or the agent or staff address those public comments, and then I'll turn the meeting over to the committee members to make a motion. We'll deliberate on the application and ultimately have a vote and decide. And then I just rinse and repeat. We're going to be using the same format for every application this evening. So if you have a personal interest in any particular application this evening and you'd like to receive written notice of tonight's decision, then please send an email with your name and address to our Secretary-Treasurer, Lindsay Stamen. Her email address is lsthamann@cityofkingston.ca. Be sure to include your full name and the file number of the application you wish to be included on. So now I'd like to call on Ian, our clerk, to confirm quorum. Ian?
Hi there, and through you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm indeed we do have quorum, with regrets from Greg Lightfoot. All other members of the committee are present. From staff, we have James Barr, Manager Development Approvals, Lindsay Stamen, the Intermediate Planner and Secretary Treasurer, Inji Kim, Planner, Anne Marie Eusebio, Intermediate Planner. Derek O'Shea is the acting deputy city clerk and is tonight's meeting host. And I am myself, Ian Sullivan. I am the committee clerk. There are currently no members of the public in the public gallery of the meeting. And I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thanks very much for that. Okay, so I'll now call the meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. And I'll refer you to the agenda. So committee members, you've had a chance to review the agenda. Can I call for a motion to approve the agenda? So moved by Vincent, seconded by Jordan. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hands, and that's unanimously carried. All right, now we're looking at confirmation of the minutes from the April 11th meeting. Everybody's had an opportunity to review them. All right, so can I call for a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting? So moved by Somnath and seconded by Blaine. Any discussion? I see none. So all in favor, raise your physical hands, and that's unanimously carried. All right, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And I see all heads shaking, so I see none. There are no delegations. We also have no requests for deferral, and there are no returning deferred items. So for the first piece of new business, it looks to be an application for a minor variance and consent, 225 Johnson Street. Lindsay, can I have you introduce this into the record, please?
Good evening, everyone. Through you, Mr. Chair, our first application tonight is for minor variance and consent at 225 Johnson Street. The file numbers associated with the application are D13012-2022 and D10004-2022. Ingi Kim will give a presentation on behalf of the city for this application.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Ingi.
Good evening, and through you, Mr. Chair. This application is for minor variance and consent at 225 Johnson Street to create one new residential lot to develop a new 4-unit multi-residential building on the severed lot. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located on the north side of Johnson Street, and it is located within the Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. The site is developed with a detached single-family dwelling, which is a heritage designated property. The subject site is currently designated as residential in the official plan and is zoned 3 to 6 family dwelling B in zoning bylaw number 8499. The subject property is adjacent to a variety of residential uses, including detached single-family dwelling, row housing, and low-rise apartments. Next slide, please. Through the consent application, the retained parcel, which is shown on the right on the map, is proposed to have an area of 344 square meters with 10.7 meters of frontage on Johnson Street. The existing detached single-family dwelling will remain on the retained parcel. The existing attached garage is proposed to be demolished to accommodate the severance and the development. Next slide, please. The 4-unit multi-residential building is proposed to be developed on the severed parcel, which is shown on the left on the site plan here, which is proposed to have an area of 430 square meters with 9.2 meters of frontage on Johnson Street. Vehicular access for both severed and retained parcels is proposed to be provided off the laneway in the rear. Next slide, please. So to facilitate the proposed lot severance and to accommodate the proposed development, several minor variances are requested. So for the retained parcel, variances are requested to seek relief from minimum side yard and aggregate side yard. As a result of the lot severance, the existing single-family dwelling on site will have 1.2 meters of side yard. This is enough to allow pedestrians to access rear yard from the front, and an additional 1.2 meters side yard width on the severed lot will ensure that there will be enough separation between the existing dwelling to the proposed building. The proposed development is consistent with the historic characteristic of the neighborhood, as many buildings located along Johnson Street and in the surrounding neighborhood predates the enactment of the zoning bylaw and do not comply with the side yard and aggregate side yard requirements of the B zone. Additionally, the proposed side yard width complies with the provisions of the HCD3 zone under the new zoning bylaw number 2022-62, which is currently under an appeal period. Next slide, please. For the severed parcel, a variance is requested to seek relief from minimum front yard. The proposed development complies with the landscape open space requirements of the B zone. And in addition, the proposal aligns with the front yards of the neighboring properties, helping to achieve a continuous streetscape. Therefore, no negative visual impact on the streetscape is anticipated as a result of the requested reduction in minimum front yard. And again, the proposed front yard depth complies with the provisions under the new zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. Similar to the retained parcel, variances from the minimum side yard and aggregate side yard is also required for the severed parcel. The proposed development is designed to mitigate the potential for intrusive overlook by providing height and building depth that is contextual with the neighboring buildings. The proposed building will be half-story lower than the neighboring properties, and the building depth matches the existing residential building to the west. Windows on the side wall will be glazed as well, as you can see in the Exhibit K elevations. The proposed development effectively mitigates the potential for overlook and loss of privacy, and is consistent with the existing character of the neighborhood. And additionally, again, the proposed side yard width complies with the provisions of the new zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. Another variance is requested to seek relief from the maximum density allowed. The proposed development and the subject site is located within centers and corridors defined in the official plan, where intensification with greater densities of residential development is permitted. The property is also zoned B, which allows multi-unit residential development. Additionally, the property is located within the walking distance of commercial uses in the of the Williamsville and city parks to the south. As such, the proposed development meets the locational criteria for high-density residential uses under the official plan. Next slide, please. A variance is also requested to seek relief for setback for interior side lot line for upper balconies. The proposed balconies in the front and the rear yard do not meet the setback requirements for the B zone under the current zoning bylaw 8499. However, the proposed balconies will comply with the new zoning bylaw where the required side yard width is proposed to be 1.2 meters. The proposed balconies are proposed to be used as a private amenity spaces for the residents on the second floor. Next slide, please. Finally, a variance is requested to seek relief for projection into the front yard. The proposed balcony in the front yard is 3.5 meters away from the front lot line, where the zoning bylaw requires 6 meters front yard setback. The proposed upper balcony will comply with the new zoning bylaw, where the required front yard depth is proposed to be 3.5 meters. The proposed balcony is proposed to be used as a private amenity space for the residents on the second floor. And the design details will be finalized through the site plan control process. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, the conceptual site plan, the applicant is proposing to develop the severed parcel with a 2-story multi-residential building, which you can see in the middle of the drawing. The development will provide 2 one-bedroom units and 2 two-bedroom units. The proposed development is compatible in terms of height, density, design, and characteristics of buildings on Johnson Street and the neighborhood. The proposed development will be subject to site plan control application, where final design details such as building facade to heritage planning satisfaction and to protect the city-owned trees will be finalized. Next slide, please. With respect to public consultation, a public notice sign was posted, a notice was mailed to 39 property owners in the vicinity, and notification was also made available in the Kingston Week Standard. To date, no public comments have been received. There was one general inquiry about the project, which staff was able to address. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the applications are being recommended for approval to facilitate a lot severance and to accommodate a new multi-unit residential building at 225 Johnson Street. The proposal maintains the general intent and purpose of both official plan and zoning bylaw. Further, the requested variances are minor in nature, as the requested reliefs and the effect of them would be limited to the subject property. Approval of this application will facilitate the development of a 2-story, 4-unit building in an area that is already zoned to allow multi-residential development. The approval will add density into a neighborhood supported by transit and active transportation facilities near employment and commercial uses, and that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The proposal represents good land use planning and is being recommended for approval subject to the proposed conditions. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions regarding this application.
Great, thanks very much for that. So at this point, I'd like to call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and address, please.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, my name is Jennifer Wood. I'm a planner with FO10 Planner and Design. Our address is 4 Cataraqui Street. I'm here this evening representing the applicant. I've reviewed the staff report and in agreement with staff's recommendation and conditions, and I'd be happy to help answer any questions.
Great, thanks very much. So committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or their agent or staff? So okay, Paul, I see you. Oh, we're just muted, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering about the parking. I wasn't clear in my mind, and I know there was an exhibit put on the screen a few minutes ago. I thought I read in the report that there's 4 laneway parking spots, but is that for the severed lot or for both lots? I wasn't quite clear.
Thank you for your question. And through you, Mr. Chair, that's 4 parking spaces for the proposed new 4-unit dwelling. There are 2 parking spaces in addition to that for the retained single detached dwelling.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and any other questions? I actually do have one, and it is actually with parking. I just want to refer you to Exhibit H, which is on page 38 of the package, or it's page number 34. On the north, are you there, Ms. Wood? I'm assuming it's going to be you who will probably address it.
I'm there. I'm on the site plan.
Okay, the site plan. So you'll notice that on the north part of the drawing, we got parking spots 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the parking spots 1 and 2. In between parking spots 1 and 2 on the left side, there's a hatched area. What's that hatched area for?
That's a stall. It's a aisle rather for a barrier-free parking stall.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that space has been designed to be extra wide and have the aisle for use for barrier-free parking.
Okay, so then along the same lines on the far right, parking spots number 1 and 2, we're showing the north property line is almost 21 feet wide, but the parking lot number 2 is roughly just under 9 feet wide. So presumably the parking spot on the other side would be 11 feet.
So the standard parking stall size being proposed is 2.7 meters wide. And you can see there one of the parking stalls has that label. It's the eastmost, and that's the standard stall size. And I guess it's not labeled, but the barrier-free stall size, I believe, would be 3.4 meters because that's the minimum requirement, and we're not seeking relief in that. So that's the extra width for that barrier-free space.
That answers my question. Thanks very much.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
yeah, I've got no further questions. So at this point, any other questions from committee members? So I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Are any members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 225 Johnson Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And I'm not seeing even anybody in the public gallery here. But do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 225 Johnson Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call, do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 225 Johnson Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And I see none, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee members for a motion. So moved by Paul and seconded by Blaine. And just to be clear, so you're moving both for the minor variance and consent? Okay, so moved by Paul and seconded by Blaine. Any discussion on this? None. So all in favor, raise your physical hand. And that is unanimously carried. Thank you. All right, so the next application we have with us for us this evening is for 14 Napier Street. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for minor variance, file number D13016-2022 at 14 Napier Street. Anne-Marie Eusebio will give the presentation on behalf of the city for this application.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, staff, and members of the public. The minor variance application presented before you this evening is for the property known as 14 Napier Street. The purpose and effect of this application is to request relief from the minimum side yard width requirement to permit the construction of a 2-story side addition and a 1-story rear addition onto the existing building. The final draft, next slide, please. The final draft of the city's new zoning bylaw was approved by council at its meeting held on April 26, 2022. And this application has been reviewed against both the zoning bylaw 8499 as well as zoning bylaw 2022-62. Next slide, please. In order to facilitate the proposed development, the applicant is seeking a variance of 0.3 meters to reduce the aggregate minimum side yard width requirement from 3.6 meters to 3.3 meters. And under zoning bylaw 8499, the minimum aggregate side yard width is similar in definition to the minimum aggregate of interior setbacks in the new zoning bylaw. No other variances are required. Next slide, please. The lot is currently developed with a 2-story single detached dwelling and attached garage within an established residential community within the Sunnyside neighborhood within central Kingston. The immediate area mainly consists of single detached dwellings with some parkland uses nearby. Next slide, please. The subject site is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned 1-family dwelling and 2-family dwelling A4 zone under zoning bylaw 8499. And the property is located within the urban residential 9 zone in the new zoning bylaw 2022-62. Next slide, please. This is the site plan for the subject property. The existing single detached dwelling is a legal non-complying as its construction predated zoning bylaw 8499. The dwelling has an aggregate side yard of 3.3 meters, in which the required minimum aggregate side yard width under the A4 zone is 3.6 meters. We are recognizing this situation too as part of this application. The proposal is to construct a new 2-story addition onto the rear of the existing garage. A portion of the existing dwelling, garage, and deck will be reconstructed. The roof line of the existing garage will be modified from a pitched roof to a flat roof, and a 1-story addition is proposed at the rear of the dwelling. Proposed additions will have an aggregate side yard width of 3.3 meters, which does not meet the required aggregate side yard width of 3.6 meters. Next slide, please. This elevation drawing indicates that the proposed 2-story side addition from the front of the property. The addition will enhance the functionality of the residential building through interior renovations and expansion of existing living space. Land use compatibility matters were carefully considered under section 2.73 of the official plan, particularly with respect to shadowing, loss of privacy due to intrusive overlook, and visual intrusion that disrupts the streetscape or buildings. Next slide, please. This elevation drawing illustrates the view that would be observed through the neighboring property located at 20 Napier Street. The neighboring dwelling at 20 Napier Street has an attached garage with a blank wall that faces the subject property. Proposed rear addition exceeds the required rear yard width of 5 meters, which will not significantly impact the abutting property on Willingdon Avenue. There is no loss of privacy, intrusive overlook, or shadowing issues. The proposal provides appropriate separation from neighboring properties. And the proposal is a modest form of development within the urban boundary and will not impact the existing streetscape. The addition will result in a development that is consistent and compatible with the built form of nearby residential properties located in close proximity to the subject site along Napier Street and Hill Street. Next slide, please. These are the floor plans for the ground floor. The proposed 1-story rear addition will create additional living space. And next slide, please. And this is the second floor plan, which will allow for the expansion of the master bedroom. There is a total of 4 bedrooms as currently existing within the residential dwelling, which will remain unchanged. No additional bedrooms will be added as part of this application. Next slide, please. With respect to public consultation, signs were posted on the subject site 10 days in advance of this meeting. Notices were sent by mail to a total number of 30 properties within 60 meters of the subject property. A courtesy notice was published in the Kingston Wick Standard, and to date, 2 pieces of correspondence have been received in support of the application. Next slide, please. With respect to our recommendation, the requested minor variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan, zoning bylaw 8499, and the new zoning bylaw 2022-62. The proposal is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, and as such, the proposed application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act. Thank you very much for your time today, and that concludes my presentation.
Great, thanks, Anne Marie. So can I now call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and address, please?
Yeah, Sam Laffin, Lot 9 Architects. Our address is 17 Colborne Street.
Great, thanks. Is there anything further you wish to add to the application we have before us?
I think I should just point out one thing I noticed in Anne Marie's presentation is that the plans that were shown are we submitted a series of plans of existing and then proposed for comparison's sake. And I think the existing plans made it into the presentation, but not the proposed. And they're in there, all of which all the plans and elevations are in the report, but just for clarity here, people referring to what was shown there, maybe it would be worth them.
So what we were seeing there in the exhibits, for instance, on page 62 and 63 are the existing, not the proposed.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this page number, sorry, but yeah,
Okay.
The elevations were correct, they're proposed, but the plans were just the existing.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I think we'll leave it at that. Well, at this point then, I'll just come to the committee members to see if you have any questions of the applicant or of staff, or maybe in respect to that as well. None? I see nobody jumping. I really don't have any questions at all. Okay, so at this point, I'll just open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public or anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 14 Napier Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 14 Napier Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. My third and final call is anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 14 Napier Street. Please raise your virtual hand. And I'm seeing none, so I'll come back to the committee for a motion. So Blaine, moved by Blaine and seconded by Paul. Any discussion on this? No, so all in favor, raise your physical hand. And that is unanimously carried. All right, thanks very much. Okay, so that's pretty much it for our new business. There are no notices of motion. We don't have any other business. There were 2 pieces of correspondence related to 14 Napier Street. So we saw that and considered that as part of the application. The date of the next meeting is June the 20th at 5:30. It's coming upon us fast. And so now we're looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Vincent and seconded by Blaine. All in favor of that, raise your physical hand. That's unanimously carried. So the meeting is adjourned at 5:57 p.m. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks.